Well, good morning. See if I can find my notes before I get too far. As usual, I have about 15 million things to talk about, and I'll try not to run too long, okay? Number one is the idea that the theme of the month is imagination, but the daily word for today is healing. So my husband this morning said, how in the world are you going to bring it all together? Imagination and healing. And luckily enough, I found a story in the heart of healing called Imagining My Healing. And I thought this would be a good way to start, because indeed that's what we're all working on right now is healing, the healing of our world, the healing of our church community, the healing of our families, the willingness to maybe perhaps venture out a little more than we have been the last year, the last 15 months. And so that's where we're starting. I have been having a lot of discussions with a lot of different people who are still feeling a little apprehensive about COVID and whether or not they can catch it, or whether or not the vaccines really work, and whether or not I should even get a vaccine because of all the side effects. And oh my God, how much fear have we had for the last year, almost a year and a half. A huge amount of fear has dominated us. And so when all of a sudden by divine inspiration the other day, I clicked on Let the Sunshine In as a starting song, because I think that's what we really need to do. We need to open up our own minds and let our sunshine not only in, but out. Because after all, that is what we are here to do, really, truly. We are here to be a blessing for others and to be blessed in turn. So this story is Imagining My Healing by Reverend Leslie Miller. I did not expect recovering from open heart surgery to be easy, but you can know a thing and still grimace and moan while you're in it. A week out of the hospital was still rough, especially at night when no one else could really help, even though they cared. Distracting myself with television only made me more anxious. I repeated affirmations until they sounded silly. There comes a point when you're simply alone with your own body and your pain. If only I could get comfortable and relax. In a fresh new nest I made in the bed, I strategically placed a small hard pillow under my shoulder, finding welcome, if temporary, release from what had been unrelenting hurt. I noticed I could finally breathe quietly and calmly, but I still couldn't rest. Anxiety began to rise again. No, I told it. Stay comfortable. You need to relax. In normal times, I remembered meditative music or nature sounds, rain, birds, or waves, would help me sleep. Reaching for my phone without changing position, I opened the Insight Timer app and accidentally began playing a track I did not know. Whatever, it would have to do. There was no fight left in me. I was ready to cry before the sounds of bubbling water and harmonic chords got my attention. I closed my eyes, letting them envelop me like a blanket. I felt my chest rise and fall gently with the rhythm. Following the breath with my mind's eye, I could virtually see inside me, visualizing oxygen entering my blood, then moving perfectly smoothly through my newly repaired heart, certain I was witnessing a miracle. I still had to heal from the surgery, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew my body was doing its perfect work to heal. Every cell knew exactly what to do. It was as if I could see God's life at work inside me. The more I allowed myself to expand into that awareness, the more I visualized myself fully recovered. Just then I remembered the affirmation, divine love is flowing through me. I am healed, whole, and healthy. The same words that had sounded hollow half an hour before were suddenly truer than anything I ever knew. Divine love was indeed flowing through me, and as me, I might add. I lingered there, gratefully blessing my body with my thoughts, knowing the activity inside my cells, like an army of little worker bees, was doing exactly what it was created to do, knitting together and repairing each other without my having to do a thing besides eat and rest. Rest. Rest was the last word I heard as I fell asleep. Safe, whole, and well, aware that I am truly one with divine love and light. So we have lots of stories about healings here at Unity of Missoula through the 15 years or whatever I've been here at this church. We've had miraculous healings, physical healings, including Laura Donito last week sharing that her husband Greg is cancer-free for the first time in 22 months. And then we've had some other things that haven't looked like healing because they were not physical bodies coming back to life in full health, etc. We have healings that take place in other forms. I was reminded of our friend Lavinia from a year ago who passed away in August. And she had battled cancer and recurring cancer and then recurring cancer. And at the beginning of when I first met her, Lavinia was one of those people who was kind of negative and dressed always in dark colors and was real quiet and real shy and real withdrawn and just seemed to feel that life was against her. And then something clicked. Roger Harvey and I have both often said, what in the world happened to Lavinia? Was it her counselor? Was it something she read? Was it something that she found in Unity that all of a sudden this light switched on? And Lavinia just became this beautiful, happy, positive, glowing person. And the last, 4 or 5 months that she was with us, she just was a complete joy to be around. And we all thought, wow, this is so wonderful. Here she is, she's healed herself. Well, she didn't exactly what we recognize as healing heal her body. But I think deep inside she did. She healed the most important thing, and that was her relationship with herself, her relationship with other people, and with her family. And she was able to cross the rainbow bridge at the end, knowing indeed that she was the light, that she had come to be a light of inspiration for so many of us. And it didn't matter that her body was left behind, because the communication that was her, the love that was her, the light that was her, still shines in this church. Whenever we think of her, whenever we remember her beautiful voice singing, and all that she did to help us keep our finances flowing. She was just a true magician in that way. Dawson Church, who writes for Unity magazine and has created something that he calls Bliss Brain, talks about that very thing, about how our healing happens from the inside out. He talks about, as Charles Fillmore wrote, mind is that from which the manifested comes forth. He claims, and I think he's right, that science has now proven that people who have a positive outlook on life tend to live 10 years longer than people who see things with a negative output. And it makes a huge difference when we remember indeed that we have the power of choice to focus on the good and to let go of the negative, to remember always the love that is the truth of who we are. I'll read you a little bit of Dawson's article here about healing and the mind. He says, is that just a metaphysical proposition, or is it literally true? It's incontestably true inside our bodies. For example, a person who thinks a stressful thought or feels an emotion such as anger, resentment, fear, or shame, we know from biomedical research that it creates certain molecules in the body, including the stress hormone cortisol. When negative thinking produces continuous high levels of cortisol over time, the results aren't pretty. Such results include loss of bone density, decreased muscle mass, an increase in skin wrinkling, degeneration in the learning and memory structures of the brain, and overall cognitive decline. Positive thinking, on the other hand, swings the balance in the opposite direction. Research shows us that when we experience consistent positive emotions, cortisol declines, and healthy biochemicals like human growth hormone and immune antibodies rise. In one study, a week-long stress reduction intensive led to a doubling of immune markers in general. And I tell you, we have a few people in our congregation that are in their 90s that are maybe even late 80s that you wouldn't guess. Because indeed, I think they have positive thinking from unity practices that has helped keep them wrinkle-free and cortisol low, et cetera, et cetera. So, and in fact, I've talked to a couple of people here at Unity who did not want to get the shot, the vaccine, because indeed they believe that their positive thinking and their regimen of meditation and daily prayer and all the good things that they do have kept them COVID-free, excuse me. In fact, today, Kathy said she had to get that T-shirt that said, I've had 2 shots, showing a shot glass, as a way to prove that indeed we are pretty much, here at Unity, feeling pretty confident about our ability to go out in the world. I have had some other talks with people who are maybe not so confident. One of them is my sister and brother-in-law. My brother-in-law has a long-term condition in his body which is akin to Parkinson's and is just gradually losing bodily function. He is still able to get out and ride a bike. He has a special 3-wheel bike that he rides when they go on bike rides. He's still able to go to the gym and work out for a little bit, but he gets really tired. My sister's complaining that he is always ready for a nap, always, after he does anything. So we're planning a family reunion the end of June, and we're all going to be together in a rental house in the Columbia River Valley. But all of us are vaccinated with the exception of my daughter, Genevieve, and granddaughter, who is too young to be vaccinated. Well, this has caused a great deal of fear and anxiety for my sister and especially because knowing her husband is, perhaps compromised. So she and I have been kind of working together to get Genevieve to change her mind and get a vaccine. Finally, this last week, after lots of back and forth and kind of upset feelings on everyone's part, my daughter said, I had COVID. She did. She had COVID last August, and then Araya had COVID in December. She said, I had COVID. I have the antibodies without getting the vaccine. Why do I need to get another vaccine? Or get a vaccine? And I thought, the accepted thinking right now in our country is everybody should get a vaccine. But I thought, I'm going to go and look online and do a little research and see if indeed maybe she could get an antibody test done, and that could prove to my sister and brother-in-law that she has the antibodies and they don't need to worry about her bringing COVID to them, which is from the research that I've seen lately, says that if you've had the vaccine, you can't carry the COVID. It doesn't stay active even in your respiratory system, that there is no active COVID out there if you've been vaccinated. So I thought, I wonder if the same is true for people who've had COVID. Well, what I read was that there is indeed a few, very, very, very few cases where people will get COVID twice. There are also a very few cases of where vaccinated people get COVID. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Is it possible that positive thinking and autoimmune increase indeed does work? Is that a possibility? That maybe because we believe we're immune to the disease and we practice things like meditation and prayer and, is it possible that we are indeed all protected by the power of God within us? So I told my sister this. I said, you know what? Maybe we need to just back off on the vaccine thing. Maybe she's right that for her, a vaccine would not be a good idea. Is it possible that people can know in their hearts what is good for them and what is bad for them? What a revolutionary idea that we should listen to our own guidance, and that we also should be willing to extend that courtesy to other people, that they can listen to their own guidance and know what is right for them. I mean, after all, we've been saying that for a century or more in Unity, that you know in your heart what you need to do. And when you listen to what's in your heart, only good can come of it. So that's where we're at. Then unfortunately, I read or saw, or my husband said, or my son, who's a big sports fan, read that 9 team members of the New York Yankees tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago. All 9 of them were vaccinated. 7 of them had absolutely no symptoms. The only way they knew they were positive for COVID was because they got tested as a normal routine once a week testing of all people involved in sports that are professionally involved in sports. The other 2 got some symptoms, but they were extremely mild. So I read the story about that and found out indeed they had gotten the 1-dose vaccine, which is guaranteed 100% that if you get COVID, you will have minimal symptoms. However, it is only 66% effective from ever getting COVID. But they figured somehow that, if you get a case of COVID, even though you're vaccinated, it will be very mild, and that is acceptable. Isn't that great? Isn't science wonderful? So here we are at Unity of Missoula. Some of us have 2 shots, some of us have 1 shot, some of us have had COVID, some of us haven't had COVID, some of us, are still a little bit fearful because we don't know what lies in the future for us. Even later on today, we don't know. And that's what we're working on, indeed, all together. And that's where imagination comes in. I put on the Zoom invitation that my theme was enhancing your imagination. What if up? Because I thought it is so important for us to start using our imagination in a good way. Kathy Frensreb and I last fall heard a presentation at the Unity Northwest Regional Conference from Mindy Odlin, who is well known in Unity circles for starting the Spirit Group movement. And then she started what she calls What If Up. What If Up is a way of living that uses your imagination, your power of creativity, to change your mind. She reminded us that so often we get caught up, our minds go round and around and around in circles about what if I park here and this parking thing and this parking meter expires and I don't have enough change for another hour, or what if I get a ticket? What if they impound my car? What if I get a flat tire on my way home? What if I run out of gas? What if all the negative thinking that surrounds us with every decision we make throughout the day. What if I pour the bowl of cornflakes and the milk makes them soggy before I get them all eaten? What if I look in the mirror, my hair is sticking up and I can't get it to lay down straight? What if? And she said, what we need to do whenever we get ourselves catch ourselves in that what if negative thinking, we change it to what if up. What if the best happens? What if I get a parking ticket, but it just says, and because you're so wonderful, you don't have to pay a fine today? Or what if I get a flat tire and some really good-looking guy stops to help me? What if I go to church and they sing, "Let the sunshine in" for a change? What if I find out that even if I get COVID, I might, be able to take a retreat like Rowan Conrad talked about a month ago or so? What if instead of negativity, I find a great blessing in the middle of all these things? What if up indeed? I thought it's just so profound to me. So finally, I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm done what if upping and done talking about COVID, and now I'm going to talk about the disciples of the month. June is imagination, one of our 12 powers, and that's what we're using when we go into positive thinking. She says to imagine the most outrageous possibilities and just really feel that, relish how wonderful it would be to be able to travel again, to be able to, connect one another, to hug each other, to sing together, to let the light in. What if? That's imagination. And that's what we want to do this month, is enhance our power of imagination. What if somebody gifts us $20,000 to remodel the kitchen. What if? All these just wonderful imaginative things that could happen for all of us. So the two disciples, or the disciple and the woman who is cited as another power source for the month, the disciple is Bartholomew, which is very, very interesting to me because he has actually about 3 lines in the Bible and only about that same amount in Charles Fillmore, because there isn't really a story about him at all in the Bible, other than in John. And in John, he's not even called Bartholomew, he's called Nathaniel, though there are some Bible scholars out there who think Nathaniel was a separate person from Bartholomew. But Bartholomew is listed as one of the 12. And John doesn't talk about Bartholomew at all. He only talks about how Jesus met Bartholomew sitting under a fig tree, and that Jesus knew he was going to see him before he saw him. And that is why Charles Fillmore thinks that Bartholomew is symbolic of imagination, because Jesus created him in his mind before he manifested under a fig tree. Interesting idea. On the other hand, the woman with the oil story to me really brings out imagination, because the woman with the oil comes from Kings, 2 Kings, chapter 4. This woman is actually a widow, and she is talking to Elijah. And she says, "What am I to do? I have no money. I have nothing left in my house but one little jar of oil. I cannot feed my sons. I cannot pay the debts of the household that my husband left me with when he died. What am I going to do?" And it's possible that the soldiers are going to come and seize my sons and take them away as slaves because I have no money to pay the debts. And so Elijah looks at her and tells her to go and gather from her neighbors all the empty pots and vessels and vases and jars that she can possibly find. Get as many together as, rob everybody in the neighborhood of pots and vessels, which she does, and her sons help her, and they gather all these pots together. And then Elijah tells her to start pouring the oil from her one vessel of oil into the empty pots. And she does. And there's more oil and more oil and more oil until every single empty pot in the village has been filled with oil. And then Elijah tells her to go and sell the oil and use the money to pay back the debts so that her sons may continue to support her. And they will be debt-free from that moment forth. Now, talk about manifestation of imagination. I just love it that in the Bible there are a lot more stories like that, where we manifest great abundance, including the feeding of the 5,000 by Jesus with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. So we have an incredible power. In fact, Linda Martella-Whitsett says it's the foundational power, because it is from our imagination that we are able to tap into our source of all the other 12 powers. And so now I'm going to want to ask us to take a few minutes in meditation, and just let's think about that power that we have to imagine the good. Imagine. This comes from a Course in Miracles lesson from yesterday, actually. The lesson is 156. I walk with God in perfect holiness. So breathe into your heart center, visualizing that the light is right there. We have let the sunlight in, and we let the sunlight out. I walk with God in perfect holiness. Today's idea but states the simple idea that makes the thought of sin or guilt or fear impossible. It promises there is no cause for guilt or fear, and thus being causeless, it cannot exist. I walk with God in perfect holiness. You cannot walk the world apart from God because you cannot be apart from Him. God is your life. Where you are, He is. Nothing can be apart from God and live. I walk with God in perfect holiness. There is a light in you which cannot die. All things that live bring gifts to you. The scent of the flowers is their gift to you. The waves of the ocean bow down before you, and the trees extend their arms to you to shield you from the heat. The trees lay down their leaves before you on the ground that you walk in softness. And the wind sinks to a whisper around your head. I walk with God in perfect holiness. I am perfectly protected. I am safe. I walk in the light, with the light, and as the light. As you step back from the world, the light in you steps forward and encompasses the world. I walk with God in perfect holiness. I light this world. I light my mind and all minds which God created one with me. I walk with God in perfect holiness, safe, surrounded, full of light, full of life, and full of blessings. And we say thank you that this indeed is so. We are blessed. We are blessed, and we are a blessing. Amen. Amen. As we come back into this room, let us affirm together our prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.